This style that has the roller bearing in here and the seal, these are a pain. They tend to go out very easily. There's just a really small snap ring that holds this thing together. This is the actual shaft that came out of this roller. And you'll see when you look at it, it's extremely worn. And what's happened was this bearing went out at this end down here. And when the bearing went out, this thing started to flop. And it had almost 1/4 inch of movement up and down. And so the operator, obviously whoever was operating, didn't even pay attention to the roller. And this thing had 1/4 inch. What do you think the height of cut looked like on this thing? I don't know how you couldn't have noticed that there's a difference in height of cut with this roller, because it is so bad. The shaft itself, looking inside of here, this roller was actually running down on the shaft, and it ruined the shaft. So we had to replace the shaft. This is like an $80 shaft. And so now, instead of being a $30 roller bearing and 2 seals, now it's an $80 shaft plus the $20, $30 for the bearings and the seals. We almost can buy a whole new assembly for the price of this. Not quite, but pretty close. And so by waiting and not doing your maintenance and not checking this, this became a very expensive object now. I'm going to pass this one around. This bearing was so bad that when they took this end apart, we just pulled the shaft out, and the race was still stuck on here, and the inner race was still on the shaft. The outer race is still stuck in the housing. And so it rusted in there. It's so bad it just came apart. We didn't even get it apart. Trying to get this race out now, since it's stuck in there, would be a very difficult task. We went ahead and replaced this particular roller completely. This end down here, if you look at it, is fine, but it's worn pretty excessive right where this grease zerk is. But this end, the aluminum housing is actually receded into the housing. So what's happened is the aluminum is pushed down into the sleeve, and it's changed the dimensions. So even if I put a new shaft in here with new snap rings and new bearings, I'm still going to have movement because the 2 stops have now moved. And so we went ahead and replaced this whole thing. I'm going to give you a rag to pass with that. This one here is similar. We replaced it. The end cap on this one, what's happened is the operator driving down the cart path travels too fast and the reels start to flop. And if you've got paved cart paths, every time it flops down, it hits the cart path and it wears off the 2 ends. This particular end here has hit so many times and it's wore it down far enough that the cap has come loose. And somebody has tried to go in here and braze the 2 back together to hold it. It didn't work very well. The other thing you can do is you take a center punch and you center punch. And you're basically pushing the tube down into the aluminum and trying to anchor it again. And they've done that before. Somebody's also tried to drill it and solder or weld through the drill hole and hold it. We got to a point where it's been tried so many times that it's still loose. We just said, let's just start all over and get a new roller. So, but this comes from operators driving too fast and hitting bumps and hitting the cart path. It damages it. This particular style here eliminates the roller bearings. Instead of having bearing problems at either end, we've got a rubber bushing or a rubber, solid rubber, and the rubber actually rides right on the shaft. And what they're trying to do is eliminate these bearings that get water in them and are damaged. And so there is a grease fitting on this. You can grease it, and it just makes the rubber to metal last a little bit longer. A common problem with rollers is the fact that this roller runs in grass. When I run in grass, I have a grease fitting right here. And so the grease fitting is pushing itself down into the turf every time it comes around. And you're going to hit objects, you're going to hit dirt, you're going to hit pine cones and sticks, and it damages the grease zerk. So the operator comes up and he's trying to grease it. Because it's been damaged, and that one has a damaged one, you can see it's been smashed on. Because it's damaged, it doesn't accept grease anymore, so they simply quit greasing it instead of screwing a new grease fitting in. If a grease fitting doesn't take grease, you need to figure out why, notify someone, or replace it yourself. It needs to take the grease. If not, it will go out in a very quick fashion. It won't take very long. So it's important that they are greased. The other thing that will happen if I damage the grease zerk is now water will start to be forced into that grease zerk. And water gets into this roller, and that takes out the bearings.
How do you get those type of these bearings out?